The distress beacon died with a pathetic whimper, leaving Nancy alone in the oppressive silence of HFY. The escape pod's emergency systems had failed 3 hours after planetfall, and now she stood among twisted vegetation that seemed to breathe with malevolent intent. This was a Death World Class 9 hostile environment, where even the Galactic Council's most hardened shock troops refused deployment. Parker's last transmission crackled through her salvaged comm unit. "Nancy, if you're hearing this, I didn't make it to my pod. The ship's breaking apart. Listen, HFY is on the Forbidden Worlds list for a reason. Everything there wants you dead. Don't try to be a hero, just survive until extraction." Nancy looked at the comm unit, then at the darkening alien sky where 3 moons rose like baleful eyes. "Sorry, Parker," she whispered. "Survival is what humans do best." The first night, she didn't sleep. She couldn't. The sounds alone would have driven most species mad howls that started subsonic and climbed to frequencies that made her teeth ache. The wet tearing sounds of something massive feeding in the distance. And worst of all, the whisper clicking that circled her crashed pod for hours. Nancy had wedged herself into the pod's cargo compartment, clutching a plasma cutter like a talisman. When dawn finally bled across the horizon in sickly purple hues, she emerged to assess her situation. The escape pod was irreparable. Her supplies, 1 week of rations, basic medical kit, plasma cutter, emergency shelter beacon, and Parker's survival manual that he'd insisted she download before every mission. Day 1 of the Parker Protocol, she said aloud, finding comfort in her own voice. Shelter, water, fire, food in that order. The creatures of HFY watched with alien curiosity as the human did something unprecedented. She didn't run, didn't hide, didn't wait for rescue. She built, using the plasma cutter. Nancy felled 3 of the stone-hard trees that dominated the landscape. The cuts released a caustic sap that burned her gloves away. But she wrapped her hands and kept working. By midday, she dragged the logs to a rocky outcropping that provided natural defense on 2 sides. The first predator came at dusk. It resembled a cross between a panther and a mantis, 8 meters of chitinous muscle and blade-like appendages. In the expedition files, they were called Reavers. They'd killed an entire Kvalish battalion in under an hour. Nancy didn't have a weapon that could pierce its armor. She had something better. She had physics. The Reaver charged. Nancy triggered the emergency shelter beacon she'd rigged as a tripwire. The creature's momentum carried it forward into the deadfall trap. 3 tons of logs, suspended by the pod's monofilament cables. The impact didn't kill it, but the creature retreated, keening in confusion. Nothing here had fought back before. Over the next week, Nancy transformed the outcropping into a fortress. She discovered the local moss was flammable when dried, creating a perimeter of torches that burned with acrid smoke. The smoke didn't just provide light, it drove away the swarm flies, whose bites carried paralytic venom. She dug a trench using a piece of hull plating, filling it with sharpened stakes coated in the caustic tree sap. When rain came scalding and acidic, she rigged a collection system using her emergency blanket, filtering the water through layers of sand and carbon from burned wood. The predators came every night, drawn by curiosity and hunger. They found something they'd never encountered: organized defenses. The Reavers learned that approach meant injury. The swarm flies found their prey surrounded by choking smoke. The tunnel worms that erupted from below discovered sharpened metal, waiting in carefully placed weak points Nancy had left in her perimeter. By day 15, something remarkable happened. The attacks stopped. Nancy stood atop her fortress, for that's what it had become, and watched through her cracked visor as a pack of Reavers circled at the edge of her cleared perimeter. They didn't attack. They observed. One approached slowly, dropping a carcass of some 6-legged herbivore at the boundary of her defenses before retreating. "Are you bringing me food?" Nancy stared in disbelief. Parker's manual had mentioned it in a footnote. Apex predators sometimes exhibited behavioral changes around persistent threats. They were testing her, learning her patterns, but also maybe recognizing something familiar. Persistence, territoriality, strength. Nancy processed the carcass, careful to show no fear. She took what she needed and left the rest. By morning, it was gone, claimed by the REAVERS. An understanding had been reached. By day 30, Nancy's camp was visible from orbit, a scar of human defiance on a world that had never known permanent structures. She'd expanded her fortress, added a rainwater cistern, cultivated a small garden of edible fungi she'd tested carefully on herself, and even constructed a crude forge from clay and stone. The rescue ship arrived on day 34. Captain Nexalon, a four-armed Dravenite with centuries of military experience, stood at the edge of Nancy's compound with his security team, weapons ready. They'd expected to find remains. Instead, they found a thriving settlement surrounded by predators that watched but didn't attack. Impossible, Nexalon breathed. No one survives Kethera 7. Certainly not alone. Certainly not a human. Nancy emerged from her shelter, lean and scarred, carrying tools she'd forged herself. Define survive, Captain. I didn't just survive. I made this place understand that humans don't give up territory easily. A reaver approached the perimeter, massive and lethal. The security team raised weapons. Nancy held up a hand. Don't, we have an arrangement. The creature dropped another carcass and retreated. Nexalon's translator struggled with his next words. You've domesticated them? No, Nancy corrected, looking at the fortress she'd built, the life she'd carved from a death world through pure human stubbornness. I taught them respect. Parker always said that's what humans do. We don't fit in. We make the universe fit us. As the rescue ship lifted off, Nancy took one last look at Kethera 7. Her camp remained below, a monument to human resilience. Within a year, the Galactic Council would reclassify the planet. Within 5, it would house the first multi-species research station on a Class 9 world. They named it Parker Station because Nancy had proven what the galaxy was still learning. When you leave a human where only creatures survive, you don't get a victim, you get a neighbor the creatures learn to respect.